There's a subtle difference, by the way, with this way, when we've nested the isHappy conditional inside the if and the else if. And that's basically that in this case, this is a short-circuiting operator. So it would evaluate this first, and only if that's true would it go on to see if this is true as well. However, here we're kind of reversing it, because if not is rich rather, is true, only then do we evaluate if isHappy. So that's just a little subtlety there, but it's slightly different. But in this case it ends up being the same, because we're just dealing with simple Boolean values. Now you could also do this the other way around. So if I rework this somewhat, we could take the isHappy. This is probably a more readable way of doing it. We could say if isHappy, and then we could basically put these inside and then remove the isHappies. So it's like this. So here we're saying if isHappy is true, then it's going to evaluate this conditional here, and if isRich is true, it's going to do this, else if isRich is false, it's going to do that. And that's the same as well. So if we put those also in the text editor, we can see those side by side as well. Just move that out for a second, move that back down here. And so we can see that all three of these kind of are equivalent, at least for this simple example. And so what that shows us is that you can always basically rework code or refactor code as you see fit, to either make it more readable if you're doing refactoring in the good way, or you can also make a bit of a mess of it and refactor it and change the code and make it less readable. So for example, if this was the initial version, which looks kind of clean, it's as clean as it can be really, we could say, actually, do you know what, I don't like this isHappy repeating each time. There's a principle, by the way, called DRY, which stands for don't repeat yourself, DRY, don't repeat yourself. And here we're repeating this test, so we can basically take out this isHappy and then push these without the isHappy parts in as a nested conditional, so here, like this. And we might say, actually, do you know what? This is much better. I'm happier with it like this. So this is kind of a more, kind of maybe, depending on how you look at it, but a cleaner version. Because we only have to deal with the isHappy case, otherwise if it's not happy, we just do this. Whereas in this case, we have to kind of like evaluate in our heads both of these conditions. Whereas both of these conditions really just depend on whether isHappy is true, really. If that makes sense. Whereas this is like easier to deal with. We look at it from kind of like a higher level. If isHappy, if that's true, I'm going to consider these. If it's not true, I'm not even going to look at these. I don't even care about these. I'm going to just go to my else block. So going from here to here would be a good refactoring, because you're evolving the code in a way that's cleaner and nicer to look at and easier to read. However, if we did things the other way and we said, actually, do you know what, we can change this and we can push the isHappies in, this looks to me like it's going the other way, because now I've got to consider if isRich, else if not isRich. And by the way, that could really, it doesn't necessarily need to be an else if then, explicitly saying this is not isRich, it could just be an else, because an else would capture the isRich being false. So that looks a bit messy there. Plus then what happens to this other else, we're going to tie ourselves up in knots. So always try to keep things as readable as possible. And just because you can nest conditionals, it doesn't necessarily mean that you actually want to nest conditionals. But again, you get to know how to best code structures like conditionals, loops, even objects as well, all those kinds of things, the more experience you have in Java. So don't be fazed by us talking about this in this kind of like advanced way. It's purely kind of optional from that point of view. Just be aware that you can have this kind of hidden complexity with conditionals. Okay, so that's nesting conditionals as well.